Good day, good week, and how are you today? Welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. I am your host, Johnny Sup, and alongside me, as always, Robert Munich. Robert, episode 40 of the podcast. Did you ever think we'd get here?
Nope. I thought we would have been canceled by now. I thought nobody would be listening at this point, but no, things are going really well. So yeah, 40. That's a pretty big number. I'm excited about that.
I was just telling Robert before we sat down to record here, I logged on this morning to check some information, check our numbers, see how things were going. And I have to say thank you to those who have listened, download, shared, etc. This was last episode 2 weeks ago was our most listened to and downloaded episode since the trade deadline in the National Hockey League. So we thank you so much for your summer support and appreciate the listens as you mow your lawn or are at the beach or whatever you're doing this summer. We do definitely appreciate it. Robert, there's lots to get into on this episode of the show. We talked about the forwards last episode and about what we saw the forward group and how we saw the lines kind of shaking down. Let's focus on the defense this time around and some goaltending this time around. What are your overall thoughts what the Flames currently have heading into training camp in about a month's time here of defensemen, the lack of defensemen maybe, and what do you think of their goaltending here overall, picture-wise?
You know, I might be in the minority here, but on paper, I actually don't think it's all that bad. It really depends on how things shake out next season, but like as currently constructed and based off what we saw last season, I actually think it's half decent. If Joel Hanley and Mackenzie Weegar can continue to play the way they were at the end of last year, or actually in the second half of last season, that's a pretty solid shutdown pair. You have hopefully a bit of a rejuvenated Rasmus Andersson who wants to make Team Sweden. He wants to make Team Sweden at the Olympics. He's playing for a new contract, and hopefully he'll come into the season refreshed. And then you'll have him and Kevin Ball, who I don't think like many people realize last year was Kevin Ball's second year in the National Hockey League, his second full season. So he'll have another year of development. You'll have a rejuvenated Anderson, and they're not going to be asked to play against the top competition, which I think is really going to help them. They'll be more of a second pair instead of the Flames' first pair and their shutdown pair. I think that's going to be really helpful. And then, and on the bottom pair there, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different options, a whole bunch of different ways you could go, and it's led by Zayne Parehk, who I think has the potential to have a really strong rookie season in the NHL. So, the defense isn't, in my opinion, as of right now, with Rasmus Andersson on the team, the defense is not that bad. It's probably middle of the pack in the NHL. And then goaltending, you got to be really happy with, because you got Duston Wolf, who proved last year that he's going to be a star in this league. So you have a star number one goaltender, and then obviously there's question marks in the backup role there. But overall, like the defense and goaltending, I think is probably the strength of this team, especially the goaltending. And, if you're to rank it league wide, like I'd say it's, like I said, kind of right in the middle of the pack, right around kind of 16, 17, 18, kind of in that range. So, for a team that's retooling, it's actually a half decent group of players there. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it right now.
I'm with you to a point. And when everyone's healthy and if they don't trade Rasmus Andersson, on paper, this is a workable NHL blue line. With the chance for Zayne Parehk to work his way into the mix, a chance for maybe a younger player like a Solovyov or Kuznetsov to work their way into the mix. But the top four, like you really want to focus on that top four. You've got Weegar and Hanley. It's not the sexiest name, Hanley, out there. He's not the sexiest player, doesn't play the greatest style, but he plays that style that allows Weegar to play his game, so that makes a very effective pairing. And then you've got Ball and Andersson, who people will always go back to the plus minus for Andersson last year and the struggles of Andersson last year. And I get it because we've done it on the show as well here. But when he's paired with Ball and those guys were both healthy, they weren't that bad. Like Ball, I think, will grow here in his third season in the National Hockey League. Andersson, like you mentioned, should be rejuvenated and healthy. So that should be for a good season. And when you have a strong top four that allows you to use your third pairing in different ways, whether that's getting Zayne Parehk some games, whether that's putting Paul Hall on the left side, seeing if he can play with a guy like Parehk, whether that's putting Solovyov in with someone to see if he can fill a role. You can do other things with your third pairing if you have a strong top four. So on paper, when healthy, Yeah, I'm with you there, Robert. I really wonder about an Andersson trade, which we'll get into in a second here. And I really wonder what happens if there's just one injury on that blue line, which again, we can get into on the show here today. Goaltending wise, I'm very fascinated with how that works out this season. I do think on paper, Duston Wolf is exactly what the Flames need, getting all the praise all stuff wrong, and deservedly so for what he did for the Flames in his rookie season. Can he repeat that will be a big question. I think we got two guys that can back up Dustin Wolf that I think both have the potential to maybe even be better than we think they can be and provide some more stability than we think the Flames can get back there. A lot of people are like, they're wondering what Devin Cooley actually is at the NHL level here. And I think we might find out what he actually is. Will it be Dan Vladar level? One can hope that it's that at a minimum, but we'll see how that plays out as well. I'm going to leave it up to you, Robert. Which way do you want to go here? Do we want to go with Zayne Parehk here conversation, or do you want to start off with the Rasmus Andersson conversation?
Why don't we go Andersson?
All right, let's do it. Rasmus Andersson, of course, for me is still the biggest storyline for the Flames going into training camp. When do they trade him? If they trade him, does he actually end up signing a contract extension? As of right now, here in the early bits of August, where do you see the Rasmus Andersson situation going, Robert? And how would you feel about Rasmus Andersson being in camp now, making this roster, and being on this team to start the season? Where are you at with all that?
You know what? I mean, in an ideal world, I think if the Flames can move out Andersson before the start of training camp, I really think that's the best way to go about it. I don't think this Flames team needs that distraction this season. You know, we saw it in the 22-23, 23-24 seasons that, you know, there were a lot of distractions around the team. You know, they always talk about that dark cloud, you know, all that kind of stuff. You don't want that. Like, I thought last season that the energy around the team and the vibes around the team, they were really good. And I think it was one of the reasons why they had so much success on the ice and got to 96 points. And I think you want to keep that going. And a big reason why the vibes were so good last year is because every single player on that team was 100% committed to being a Calgary Flame that year. There wasn't one player who was on the trade block. There wasn't one player who asked for a trade. There wasn't anything like that. Everyone was super committed and ready to go from the very beginning of the season. And I think it's one of the reasons why they played so well. And I think you want that same thing heading into next year. And I mentioned it before in the podcast, but like, I don't think Rasmus Andersson, the human, is going to be a distraction at all. I think the guy's a pro. He's well respected in that locker room. He's a leader in that locker room. He's not going to make a big fuss about it. It's just like the storyline in general. And it's going to be the media speculation. It's going to be the fans. It's going to be social media. There's going to be so many things that pop up during the year about Rasmus Andersson. Like, you know, what happens if he gets hurt, or what happens if his play is at a similar level to it as it was last year. All of a sudden, the noise around that whole situation is going to get really loud. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Flames to do something about it. So in an ideal world, I think you want to avoid that entirely. So moving him, I think, makes the most sense. But one of the issues that the Flames, I think, are running into is that because of their plan of, you know, they want to make the playoffs, they want to do everything they can to get in and be competitive. I wonder if that's maybe getting in the way a little bit of them getting more aggressive on the Andersson trade front. Because, you know, Andersson, he's if he plays up to his potential, he's easily the second best defenseman on the team.
Easy.
And, you know, if they do want to make a run at a playoff spot, which is what their goal is, they're going to need him. I mean, if you trade Rasmus Andersson, you don't get anything back for him. You know, the defense all of a sudden goes from being kind of middle of the pack to being in the bottom third of the NHL. So it's once again one of the reasons why going with this retool and prioritizing winning now might get in the way of some futures-based decision-making. So, yeah, man, overall, like, I think you want to get it done before training camp, but the way it feels right now and all that, like my prediction is that Andersson's going to be here in training camp. He's going to start the season in Calgary. That's where I see things going right now.
Because of what you just mentioned, I think the Flames have missed an opportunity. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it should have been at the draft. I'm not saying it should have been July 1st. I'm not saying any of that stuff. But I think the Flames have missed an opportunity already to have jumped on this and got ahead of it, because I'm with you. Rasmus Andersson, the human, he's going to be in here. He's going to be professional. He likes being in Calgary. He likes the team. He's got a good relationship with Conroy and the coaching staff. And he's motivated to do a few of things personally on his radar, like making Team Sweden at the Olympics. So he's going to be in here. He's going to be motivated. But like you mentioned, that dark cloud of will they trade Rasmus Andersson is just looming large. And I think the Flames have missed the opportunity because now they're putting themselves in a situation where he is going to come to camp. I fully believe he is. I don't believe Eric Francis when he says he'll be traded by September 1st. I just don't believe it because I've seen this play out in front of our eyes here. They've missed so many different ways and quote unquote deadlines that they could have moved him already at. I think he's going to come to camp, and I think the Flames are putting themselves in a dangerous situation with Rasmus Andersson being in Calgary with the injury concerns that could pop up. And the big one for me, and the one we've seen play out more than once in Calgary, is no contract, trade deadline, but your team's in a playoff spot or 1 point away from a playoff spot type of situation. Worst case scenario playing out. And what has the Flames done in the past? They keep these guys and they go for the playoffs because that's the mandate coming down from on high is make the playoffs, be a playoff team. And so if you're going to move on from Rasmus Andersson, you've got to do it now. Why tempt fate? Why put him even in camp? And it's nothing against Rasmus Andersson. I love Rasmus Andersson. I want him on the Flames. I'd love to see him stay for a few more years to help his team to the next level of being a competitive hockey team. But if he's not going to be here long term and you're going to trade this guy, why bring him to camp? I understand that you want to, maximize his value. You want to have the hammer when it comes down to being a trade and the value, but at the same time, you're pinning yourself into another different corner. So which problem do you want to take on if you're the Calgary Flames? And I think they've missed the opportunity to get max value for the player. Now people know they're going to trade this guy. Are they going to get the package you want? Probably not. And I know going to the trade deadline, those packages could change, but then you come into the other side, like I just mentioned. What happens if you're in a playoff spot? What happens if Rasmus Andersson is healthy and you're in a playoff spot? Are you really trading that guy? And I know what they've said, and I know what Conroy has out there in the ether of he's going to make sure that they're not going to lose a player for nothing. But I also know the other side of it. I've also seen the other side of it, and I also know how this owner works. So I think the Flames missed an opportunity here, and I know Rasmus is going to be professional, but I really wonder what that's going to do to the Flames here as we head towards training camp as well.
Yeah, it's a super interesting situation, and like I said, I think the one thing that really concerns me is just if Rasmus, like you said, if he gets injured or if his play is not up to the level that we expect it to be, man, it's going to get loud around this fan base. Like this fan base is going to be pissed off, and there's going to be a ton of noise on social media. There'll be a ton of negativity on social media, and like if you're the Flames, I just don't know if you want to deal with that. And I guess, if you're Craig Conroy, I mean, this whole situation, what you're hoping happens is that Andersson starts next season and looks like the guy that we saw from 2019 to 2023. Like that's the guy that you're hoping comes out and he's at least playing at like a 50-point pace, and he's scoring goals, and he's playing well defensively, and he's playing big minutes, and he's winning those minutes. That's the most important thing, unlike last season. So maybe, if Andersson comes out and, starts the season on fire, almost like he did last year, could that increase his trade value? And if you eat a little bit of money on that, could you get a home run kind of haul for Rasmus Andersson, almost like you got for Elias Lindholm? So that's what I think Craig Conroy and the Flames are hoping happens. It's just there's obviously risk attached to that, and it's not a guarantee that Andersson comes into next year and lights the world on fire. So, as a Flames fan, I think you're just hoping, if he's not moved by the start of training camp, I think you just have to hope and pray that he comes in and he lights the world on fire, and he's the Rasmus Andersson of old, and he still has that swagger and toughness and agitation and offense, just all the things that make him a really good defenseman. Hopefully he comes in to the start of next season and shows those things off, because if he gets back to that level, I do think the Flames can get a lot for him in a trade, especially if they eat money. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And another thing too is what's the trade market going to look like? I mean, you would think based off like all like the trade boards and what you hear from insiders and reporters, like it sounds like Andersson could be like the best player available via trade on defense this season. So like if that's the case and he has a strong start to the year, maybe the Flames can get a home run haul for him.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I just also have to caution, like if Anderson's off to a great start to the season, the Flames are probably also off to a great start. And then that scenario, the biggest fear of mine is they're going to go to the trade deadline in that 6th spot. Rasmus Andersson looks good, and they just keep him because they want to make that playoff spot. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it is. I don't necessarily think, though, Rasmus Andersson's blocking young kids. We talked about Zayne Parehk. Zayne Parehk gets a lot of attention, justly so. Probably the Flames' best prospect they've seen in a long time. Skater-wise, we'll leave Duston Wolf out of that conversation. He's highly touted. He's been at training camps for Team Canada. A lot of people expect him to step into the National Hockey League right away here and have success. I've even had people I've read online, and take it for what you will. People are like, this guy's going to be in for a Lane Hudson-style first year. And I'm like, let's just cool our jets here on Zayne Parehk and stuff. But what do you make of the chances Zayne Parehk has into this season? How much run will the Flames actually give Zayne Parehk? I think a lot of this is up to Zayne himself and how he performs. But where do you see Zayne fitting in, if at all, on the Flames this season?
I mean, I think he's written in pen in the lineup to start this year. Like I don't see a world where he doesn't start the year with the Flames on the opening night roster playing in game one. Like he has to be there. And the only way that he doesn't play game one and he's not on the opening night roster is if he has another training camp like he had last year. Like last year, he was terrible. You know, in Penticton, he was awful. Training camp, he was awful. But it's because I think he just had so much going on that previous summer. I just didn't think he was fully prepared to be ready for an NHL training camp, and that's totally fine. Like it's a great learning lesson for Zayne Parehk, and like so last year he goes to the Memorial Cup, he gets drafted, he's got Flames rookie camp, he's got Team Canada camps. Like the guy literally had no time to train and no time to prepare, and on top of that, he was injured. So that's the reason why he struggled at training camp last year, and I can almost guarantee that that's not going to happen again. Like I think he's going to come in ready to go 100%. He's had a lot of time to train. He had that opportunity with Team Canada at the Worlds. He went to the Hockey Canada Summer Showcase. He's going to be ready for training camp, and I 100% expect him to make the opening night lineup. And I think role wise, it should be on the third pair. You shouldn't be putting a 19-year-old in the top four of an NHL lineup to start the season. So that's like I would be stunned if he has a similar training camp to the one that he had last year. Like I expect him to come in and look really good and show that he's ready to start the year in the National Hockey League.
The one thing I've noticed about Zayne Parehk is if you go back and listen to interviews last summer, you had this, rightfully so, this cocky kid who thought that it might have been a little easy for him to come and get things and hand things. He just got humbled a little bit at training camp last year. You listen to interviews this summer. I listened to the Empty Netters podcast a couple weeks ago with Zayne Parehk on it, and just the maturity of this young man from year to year. He knew last year he was awful. He admitted last year he was awful. He admitted what he needs to work on, and it showed great growth just off the ice. And for me, that tends to lead to the mindset being one thing, that he wants to be in the National Hockey League starting day one, wherever he might end up playing, and he's going to put his best foot forward at camp. So if he has a bad training camp, I'm going to be absolutely astounded because of everything else I've seen and heard from this young man. The training staff, the coaching staff, the management staff, they've all raved about the work that Zayne Parehk has been putting in this summer and how he's going to come to camp. And I think we can't just hand this guy a job, and I think he definitely will earn a job at training camp. And I think I'm with you there, Robert. Put him on that third pair and just let him get accustomed to the league. Let him get accustomed to how he plays, to the speed of the game. And I think he will naturally learn and pick things up. He's done it his entire career thus far. If you go back and you watch his first couple of games at Saginaw in the Ontario Hockey League, he was just a guy, but he ended up being the guy in the league right at the end of last year. So this guy knows what it takes to grow. He soaks up the information and he works towards it. He's a smart young man who has an opportunity in front of him, and I think he's smart enough to jump through it and take that opportunity here. I'm with you, Robert. I don't pen him in, but I definitely put him in there, and it's going to take a lot for me to take him out of that lineup. You do have a lot of competition around him for that third pair here. We can get into the defensive pairs if you'd like here in a second, but I think he's heads and tails above everyone else the Flames have in the organization, and when you have a guy like this, you want to get him games. You want to get him playing, and you want to get into playing at a high level, and I think putting him in the lineup day one is a good job for the Flames. Unless, of course, he comes in here and has the unthinkable of a camp, I think he's in that lineup.
And what role do you see him starting the year with? Like, say, like the first 2 or 3 months of the year.
I think you put him on that third pair, 5-on-5. You let him play, and you slowly. I think you slowly work with him and in preparation with him to be on a power play unit for the Flames. So that second pairing. But that second power play, allow him to just slowly develop. I think you got to find himself a really good veteran to play with, whether that is, say, Pahal on the left side. Does he have somebody else in mind? Maybe it is Hanley down the line that plays with this guy. But I think you put him in a third pairing and allow him to develop his game. But I think you also work with him to eventually be, if not off the hop, part of that power play unit, maybe starting with power play number 2.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the one thing I want to say is we need to make sure that we temper our expectations for this guy.
Yes, please.
Yeah, yes, it is incredibly exciting to have him as part of the Flames organization. Yes, he is the best prospect in the organization since Matthew Tkachuk. He has the potential to become a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman, a Quinn Hughes, a Cale Makar type of player. He is that talented, and that is insanely exciting. But we have to remind ourselves, he's 19 years old. He turns 20 in February. Very rarely in the NHL do you see a 19-year-old defenseman come into the league and become a star. This is going to take time. So I've seen some stuff on X in just my interactions with people, and I've seen a lot of people saying he's got to play in the top 4, he's got to get big minutes at 5-on-5, and I'm just you can't do that to start his career. I think you're setting him up for failure if you do that. Like you just said, slowly work your way into the league. Start on a third pair, in the first 30 games, say you play about 25 or 26 of them, take the odd night off, play him on the second power play unit. Don't put him on the first power play unit right away. Just give him time to get used to the NHL, because the NHL is just the jump from the OHL to the NHL is massive. And I know Zayne dominated the OHL, but it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get his feet underneath him. It almost reminds me of Johnny Gaudreau's rookie year, where it took him probably 3 months. It really wasn't until that game in Los Angeles around Christmas when he scored the hat trick when he really took off. Mm-hmm. It took Johnny 3 months to really get going. And I could see the same thing kind of happening here with Zayne. So I'm totally with you. Start him on the third pair, shelter his minutes at 5-on-5, put him on this quarterback, the second power play unit, and just slowly work your way into the league. And then, if December, January, or February rolls around and he's showing that he can handle more minutes, he can handle more responsibility, then give it to him. And that's awesome. And give him the quarterback spot on the first power play unit. Give him maybe some top 4 minutes, especially after you trade Rasmus Andersson. That's totally fine. But to start next year, just be cautious, be careful. There's really no need to throw him into the fire and throw him into the deep end and it's sink or swim. Just let him get used to the game. So I really hope people don't have these crazy expectations for him in his rookie campaign.
I always look at those conversations with people that want to give Zayne Parehk all the minutes off the hop right off the bat, and I always ask them why. And they never have a good explanation for him coming back. The Flames start against the Oilers, against the Canucks, then the Blues, then the Golden Knights, then the Mammoth, then the Golden Knights again, then the Jets, Canadiens, Jets, and Rangers and Maple Leafs. You're talking October starts off with a massive bang. A couple of huge divisional games, You got a couple of games against the Jets, who are a tough opponent. You're never, you don't fare well in Vegas a lot of times. So the Flames are jumping off here with a very strong schedule. Do you really want to throw a kid in there who has one meaningless NHL game under his belt to top 4 minutes against those type of players? Talk about baptism by fire. There's nothing wrong with easing a player into the National Hockey League. You've just mentioned the Johnny Gaudreau situation. It's a great example of it. Sean Monahan started the National Hockey League. He was third-line center, and it took him a year and a half to work his way up to being in the top 6 and a top-line role with the Flames. It's nothing wrong with letting these guys explore and get acclimated with their roles in the National Hockey League and then slowly build them up and give them more minutes. I like what you said there, Robert. Let's keep these expectations at an Earth level. There's no need to put this guy on Jupiter and give him all of the minutes, all of the time, all the expectations. He very well may end up winning the Calder Trophy next year, being that good, but he also could be a guy who just played 12 minutes a night for the Flames. Both situations can happen next year. There might even be a situation where he doesn't play for a stretch of games because he just wasn't up to par, wasn't good enough, and he needs a bit of a break. That also can happen. We've seen that happen in the past. So Zayne Parehk has everything in front of him. He'll have every opportunity to be a good hockey player, but there's no sense in overloading a guy just because you like him and it worked on NHL 25. This isn't a video game. It doesn't work that way. And so easing a guy in like Zayne Parehk is, I think, the best way of going about things, because it just helps players develop. It really, really does. Very seldom do you get a guy that steps in there and has the Lane Hudson type of season. It doesn't happen all that often. Also, Lane Hudson's like 4 years older than Zayne Parehk too.
Like Hudson came into the league older. Quinn Hughes came into the league older. Cale Makar came into the league older. Like all those guys were 20, 21, or 22 years old in their first NHL season. Parehk's 19. So once again, we're not saying Parehk's not going to have a good year. Like you just said, for all we know, he could win the damn Calder. I think we're just saying for at least the first couple months of the season, just set him up for success and let him slowly work his way into it, because there's no need to ruin the kid's confidence, by throwing him in a top 4 role and playing against some of the best competition in the NHL right away. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So, like, we're both massive fans of the player. Like, I legitimately think he could be on like the same level as a Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar. Like, I think he is that talented. So the future is incredibly bright. It's super exciting to have him, as part of the Flames organization. Yeah, I'm with you right there. I can't wait to see what he brings to the National League level. Let's stick on the rookie conversation, Robert. Is there another guy that you think can make the jump for the Flames? And maybe even a better question is there room for another guy to make the jump? Is there room for a Solovyov? Is there room for a Kuznetsov or Brstavich if he surprises at camp? Do you see anyone being able to make that jump? And is there even a spot for that person if they can make the jump? Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a spot available on the left side. No doubt about that. The left side of the Flames defense is not great. It's not all that deep. So a Yan Kuznetsov or Ilya Solovyov, maybe even Artem Grushnikov if he has an incredible training camp. One of those three guys could definitely get a spot on the left side on a third pairing. The only issue that I think you run into is, like, do you want to roll out a Solovyov and Parehk pairing? Like, I mean, there's a lot of inexperience there. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the one question I have. So definitely, there's definitely a spot to be earned on the left side. On the right, if Rasmus Andersson is still with the team in training camp, I don't think there's a spot for Brstavich. I think you're more than happy to put him back in the American Hockey League and let him continue to grow and develop. So, the right side, it's a logjam there. And, on the right, you got Mackenzie Weegar, Rasmus Andersson, Zayne Parehk, Braden Pahal, and then you also have Miromanov. Like, there's 5 guys right there, and there really wouldn't be a point in bringing up Brstavich just to have him play 1 out of every 5 games and put him in the press box. Like, I think his development is best served in the American League. And, when Rasmus Andersson does get moved, then that opens up a spot. Then Brstavich enters the conversation, because I think within the next year or two, he'll be a National Hockey League defenseman. There's no doubt in my mind. I think he's definitely good enough for it. I just don't think in training camp and to start this season, I don't think the role is just there for him quite yet. So my prediction is I think one of Solovyov or Kuznetsov is really going to push for that third pairing left side spot. And, we'll see if Ryan Huska and Craig Conroy, if they're comfortable putting two rookies together on a third pair to start the season.
I want to see Solovyov or Kuznetsov make that jump. I really think that one of those two guys can find themselves a role on this team, on this roster, if they come in here prepared, they have a good camp, and they show it what it is. And if that's the case, I think you make room for that, and I think you move people around for that. Does that mean then Mackenzie Weegar plays with a Solovyov or a Kuznetsov, and Hanley plays with Zayne Parehk, something like that? Like, do you move guys around to give them in positions to be successful? I know that does different things to your top four that we just talked about and raved a little bit about, but it's if you have a rookie come in here and have that good of a camp that he shows he belongs, then I think you make room for them. I think Jake Bean, Danilo Miromanov, and Braden Pahal should all be looking over their shoulders a little bit, trying to continually push themselves forward to be National Hockey League defensemen, because I think those three guys are in danger of losing their spot if they don't come prepared, if they don't come to camp ready to take the job back and continually earn that job each and every game. For me, there is definitely a job there. And I think there's a job ready for these guys if they can come in here and beat out a veteran and show that they need that job, that they're perfect for that job. And I think if that happens, I think the Flames will make room for those guys. Maybe not an everyday NHLer, but maybe he's the rotation. Solovyov comes in here and he's a rotational guy on the left side. Him and Bean switch in and out of a lineup type of situation. So I think there is a job there. I think those are the only two guys that I have, though, Solovyov and Kuznetsov, the guys who can make the jump. And I'm not talking bad about Prestevich at all, but I think another year in the American Hockey League to grow his craft, to be a guy who continually develops at that level, I think would be really good for him. Give him all the minutes, much like we talked about not rushing Zayne Parehk up the lineup in the Flames organization. Do the same thing with Parehk or with Prestevich. Don't need to rush him into this lineup just because he was part of the Lindholm trade and you think highly of this guy. Let him develop into those roles and allow that guy to be prepared for those roles when he gets there. So I think there are jobs to be had. I think there are guys to take those jobs, and there are guys on this roster who are susceptible to be passed. Miromanov, that everyone has to come to camp prepared, and I think the Flames need to make sure that they're putting the best six on the ice every single night and have a really good number seven. So I really am interested to see those cat battles play out here at camp for the Flames here.
Yeah, you made an interesting point there about, if a Solovyov or Kuznetsov really shows that they're ready to play in the NHL, then maybe you do switch up the pairs and you put a Hanley down with Parehk, and then you put a Kuznetsov or Solovyov with Weegar, and then you'd probably have to end up giving Kevin Ball and Rasmus Andersson those matchup minutes again. But
maybe even go Ball with Weegar and make Andersson play with someone else, whatever works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just if one of those guys makes the team out of camp, then he's just automatically on the third pair. They can be flexible with who they play with, which I think is pretty interesting. I didn't even think about that. And
you do something like that, then you have even more even minutes throughout your roster, right? You don't have two pairings playing 28 minutes a night. You have three pairings that you can play maybe a little more often, and then you use your big guys on your special teams, your penalty kills, and your power plays to get their minutes up there. Nothing wrong with putting Weegar with Andersson on a PK to get them more minutes together, right? To get those minutes up for those guys and to still reward your veterans. But I really think that there's an opportunity here for guys, because I think it is sink or swim time for a couple of these AHL guys. Jeremy Poirier is another name that people like to bring up a lot. Is it sink or swim time for him? I think it is. I think it's time for Solovyov to show up or move on type of situation. So we have guys who need to make a jump, make a name for themselves. Good opportunity here at camp to do so. And there are jobs to be had here, because if you look at it, Jake Bean wasn't undeniable last year, especially near the end of the season. Braden Pahal was really good to start the year, but I think he faded down the stretch here. Miromanov, everyone knows my thoughts on him, so I won't give him an unnecessary shot. But there are jobs to be had here. So if you come into camp, you're prepared for it. There are guys that are ready to take those jobs if, again, they are prepared for those jobs.
Yeah, I really wonder what the Flames' plans are for some of those depth guys, mainly Miromanov and Bean. And
the Sun?
Yeah, strapping a rocket to him.
Sorry.
if I'm Craig Conroy and Ryan Huska, like I think I go into training camp next year with the idea in mind of Bean and Miromanov are not going to be on the NHL roster. And whether it's a trade for future considerations, or you put them on waivers and hopefully one of them gets claimed, or you just put both of them in the American Hockey League, I think both those guys should not be on the Flames next year, because I think they need to prioritize younger guys getting minutes. So like we just mentioned, whether it's Solovyov or Kuznetsov, you want to give Zayne Parehk a lot of minutes. Like, you can't really do those things if both Bean and Miromanov are on the opening night lineup. So if I'm the Flames, that's what I do. I definitely look to move on from both those players, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him. Like how do you see that shaking out as we head into training camp?
Knowing how the Flames work, there's always going against what we think of what we would do and what the Flames will do, and knowing what the Flames will do. I know what the Flames are like, and so these guys will be given every opportunity because veterans are given the benefit of the doubt. So I think these guys will be given the same opportunities to fight for those jobs. But I think at the same time, I'm a little bit along the lines of where you are. I think that they're going to have to clearly be better than Solovyov or Kuznetsov or even Jeremy Poirier to keep their jobs. I think both Bean and Miromanov should be very much looking over their shoulders the entire training camp, keeping an eye on who's coming after their jobs, because I think they're both in big trouble. Miromanov more than Bean for me. But I think the Flames will give these guys every opportunity, because we've seen it in the past, even with Ryan Huska. These veterans get the benefit of the doubt. And so if you're Solovyov and Kuznetsov, you have to make it undeniable that you're better than Jake Bean, in my opinion, to make this roster, because we've seen it before. They've always played the veteran over the young kid, and people say that's a Sutter thing. It's not a Sutter thing. It's a Flames thing. They've done it for years. They've done it for decades. They've always played the veteran over the kid if it's close. Be undeniable. And so I think Jake Bean has to worry a little bit. Denis Miromanov has to worry a little bit. And Pahal, to an extent, might end up being the seventh guy, and that's okay because he can rotate into that third pairing if need be, and it's a good 7 to have, I think. But these guys will be getting every opportunity at camp, so take advantage of it. So whoever may the best defenseman win, and I think the other guys are just going to find themselves on waivers and back in the American Hockey League.
Yeah, I think your read on the situation is right. If Kuznetsov and Solovyov play at the same level as Jake Bean, I think you're right. I think they'll probably end up keeping Bean on the NHL roster and letting Solovyov and Kuznetsov continue to develop. But like if
I hate.
I was just going to say, if it were up to me, even if Kuznetsov and Solovyov are playing at the same level as a Jake Bean, I'm choosing one of those guys over Bean, because I still think that there's more upside to those two younger players than Bean. Jake Bean is what he is at the NHL level. He's a depth defenseman. He's a half decent puck mover. An average skater. Like he's one of those guys that you can just plug into a lineup and not really have to worry about all that much if he's a number 6. But like, don't you want more than that? And I do. I think Kuznetsov and Solovyov, if they continue to grow and they continue to develop, I actually think they could bring more to the lineup than that. They're bigger, they're stronger than Jake Bean. They could be more physical. I think there's more defensive upside to their games than with Jake Bean. Offensively, I think Bean probably has the edge on those two guys, but I just think from like a defensive perspective, even like on special teams with the penalty kill, like I think Solovyov and Kuznetsov could be really solid NHL players one day. So I'd like to see them get the chance over a guy like Bean, and we'll see if it happens. Like you said, the Flames, they do like their veteran players, and with their strategy of wanting to remain competitive and make the playoffs, sometimes that allows them to make decisions, some short-term decisions and keeping veteran players around instead of trying to put in rookies in the lineup, because they do want to win hockey games. And hopefully that doesn't get in the way of some of these rookies. I really hope that they do take a long-term approach, because like what's the worst that could happen putting a Kuznetsov in the lineup over Jake Bean?
He could be Jake Bean.
He could be Jake Bean, or maybe he falters and he just shows he's not an NHL player. Big whoop. At least you find out if you got something Kuznetsov or not. So just make that change. Give Solovyov, give Kuznetsov a chance to play in the NHL this year. Like last year, those guys didn't even play, did they? Did either one of them get a game?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I really can't.
I'm gonna look it up quickly. I think Kuznetsov got called up, but I don't think he ever played. But like that can't happen again, right?
Like the Flames like to take this approach to that bottom pairing of what's the floor, and they know what the floor of Bean is. They know what the floor of Miromanov is. Why not bet on the ceiling? Because I think the ceiling for a Kuznetsov is higher than any of those guys we've talked about. I think it's higher than Pahal, higher than Bean, higher than Miromanov. I think Kuznetsov's a better defenseman all around than Solovyov, all due respect. I think he's a better defenseman than Poirier is. I think of all these guys that could take the jump and take a job there, I think Kuznetsov has a leg up. If you look at ceiling only, I think there's something there if the Flames can do it. So if this race and this job is close, why not bet that you could get Kuznetsov in there? The floor is going to be what Jake Bean provides for you, but the ceiling could be more. The ceiling could be someone who maybe ends up playing with Mackenzie Weegar on a second pairing, and you'd have money found, gold found. Now, of course, the other end can be true as well. He could falter and be awful, but I think it's time for the Flames to start betting on a few ceilings rather than going with what they know of the floor of hockey players are.
Yeah, and especially defensively. Like, I really think that there's a decent ceiling there defensively with those players. Offensively, I don't think they're going to provide much, but I do think these guys are really good defensive players. Yeah, no, it's totally fine.
You got guys. Parek's going to provide offense. Anderson, if he's around, will provide offense. Weird can provide offense.
Rustevich in the future.
So you have those guys.
Yeah.
Now you need those guys that are like Kevin Ball. Like I always go back to the Robin Regier and Jordan Leopold pairing. And why did that work for the Flames in 2004? One guy was offense, provided it. The other guy was that steady presence behind him, and they worked well together. You build pairs, not saying you're going to have 3 Robin Regiers on this roster, but why not try to find these guys with the ceiling to defend at a higher level than what you're settling for with Bean and Miromanov?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And by the way, Ilya Solovyov played 5 games last year. Kuznetsov played 0.
Those must have been early in the year then, those games.
It was in February, end of February.
Well, I guess my read was well off.
Remember, like the Washington, Tampa, Florida, Carolina trip. Remember they went into Washington and won. He was playing around then.
Right.
After the Four Nations break.
That's right.
I completely forgot about that.
Now that you've jogged my memory with actually looking up facts rather than us spearheading off top of our heads, I do remember that. And Solovyov was fine, but again, he wasn't undeniable. So what did they do? Right back to the veteran, right? So what would be your defensive pairings, Robert? You're going into training camp. Everyone's had a decent training camp. We'll pretend everyone's been good enough. What would be your 6th and 7th defenseman here? What would be your pairings?
Okay, so we'll start at the top. So I'll continue with Hanley and Weegar. I thought those guys were fantastic last season. You take a look at all the metrics, your eye test, everything. They were clearly the Flames' best defensive pairing. And when they got put together, it took a little bit of the load off of Andersson and Ball, which I think helped a little bit. So I got Hanley and Weegar as my number 1 pair, taking on all the toughest matchups at 5-on-5. I think that makes a lot of sense right now. And then that moves Ball and Andersson to a second pair. Hopefully that can lighten their load a little bit. They don't have to play crazy minutes. They don't have to play against the top competition all night. I think that'll be really helpful for those 2 guys, especially for Andersson kind of getting his confidence back. So Hanley, Weegar, Ball, Andersson, and then the third pair, Parehk on the right side. Once again, I have him in pen. I think he's guaranteed to make this team. And then there's a whole bunch of different options that you could go with for his pair, for his partner on the third pair. And I put Pahal on the left side.
Okay.
I think you start there because I do think Pahal, out of all the options between Solovyov, Kuznetsov, Bean, Miromanov, all those types of guys, I do think Pahal is the best player out of that bunch right now. But I like we just talked about, there is definitely a world where Solovyov or Kuznetsov can come into camp and take that spot. So as of August 4th, at the time we're recording this episode, I'll go Pahal and Parehk as my third pair. And then as the extras, I think you just go like Bean and Miromanov just because of their contracts. And I don't think you want to put Kuznetsov and Solovyov in the press box to start the season. I think you'd rather see them in the American League, and I don't see either of them getting claimed on waivers. So just to reiterate, Hanley, Weegar, Ball, Andersson, Pahal, Parehk, and then the fourth pair, if you want to call them that, the extras being a Miromanov. That's what I got right now. How about you?
Yeah, I have the exact same, and it's not that we talked about this before we recorded either. I have the exact same way with almost the exact same thoughts. I really am hoping that a Kuznetsov or Solovyov can upset the apple cart here, because I'd really like to see Paul Andersson, maybe Kuznetsov, Uyghur, and then have Hanley to play with Zayne Parehk. I really hope there's a defenseman out there that throws a wrench into these plans, because I can also see the Flames just being completely boring. It had the Uyghur Hanley pairing will be there. The ball Anderson pairing will be there, and I really think that Bean and Pahal will still get some run to give Parek some nights off. But I really hope there's a guy that throws a wrench into these plans, into these pairings, and makes it a little bit more interesting. Because right now it's pretty easy for me to pick out the top six for this Flames team.
Yeah, one thing that just came to mind, I think might be kind of interesting to talk about is, could the Flames have a strategy with Rasmus Andersson holding on to him, where they keep him up until the trade deadline, because like we've talked about, they want to make the playoffs and they want to be competitive. So they keep Rasmus Andersson until the trade deadline. That allows Zayne Parehk to kind of slowly come together and slowly develop through the first 4 or 5 months of the season. Mm-hmm. And then say they move Rasmus Andersson at the deadline. Do they think that they can now bump up Parehk into the top 4? And all of a sudden, their defense really, isn't all that hampered that much because Anderson's gone.
Interesting.
You know what I'm talking about? Could Craig Conroy, could he be telling the media and the fans one thing about, or telling mainly the media, with trading Rasmus Andersson, we're going to do everything we can to move him or whatever. But maybe in his actual heart, he's in his actual plan, it's why don't we keep Andersson on this team for as long as possible? Give us the best chance to win games. Give Zayne Parehk time to get used to the NHL. Then we'll move him at the deadline. Then we'll move Parehk up, and maybe we can acquire another defenseman via trade, either in the Andersson deal or a separate deal, to help boost the group and stay competitive. I wonder if maybe that's kind of something that they've talked about or something they've thought about here.
That's an interesting theory. I like it, actually, because we talked about how smart Parek is and how you want to ease him into there. If he shows he's ready, I think that's a great move for the Flames, because then that also can affect what you're looking for in an Andersson pairing. So if Zayne Parehk takes on all these minutes and excels and is everything that the fans think he can be, maybe you look at futures in a Rasmus Andersson trade. And if he's not quite ready, maybe you just look at an NHL filler for right now as part of an Andersson deal or a separate deal here. That's an interesting thought and theory, Robert. I can buy that if that's what the Flames are going to try to do as well. If that's what they're trying to do, that I can get on board with. That I can buy. That is something that I think would benefit Zayne, Andersson, and the Flames at the end of the day, because it allows everyone to be in a spot where they're comfortable with. And then moving on from a player is a little bit easier if you're comfortable with the replacement you can put in. But because if you take Andersson out of this lineup right now, what does your top 4 look like?
Yeah, they're screwed.
Yeah, it's Uyghur and the boys, like we talked about a few weeks ago. I called it Uyghur and the boys without Andersson. It's Uyghur with a bunch of young guys who haven't really proved themselves or have very low ceilings to this roster. So I like that theory. I kind of hope now that's what Conroy's plan is.
Yeah, and obviously they did try to move him. We heard about the trade to LA and Ottawa and all that stuff. But I wonder if in the back of their mind they're if we can't find that massive grand slam home run type of trade for Andersson, we're more than happy keeping him, because it allows Parek to develop on the third pair. And then by the time the deadline rolls around, maybe Parek has shown that he can handle top 4 minutes and he can play on a pair with Kevin Ball, which I think is a really interesting pairing in the future. And then as part of an Andersson deal, say they trade with Dallas as an example, could they get Lee and Bushel back, and then all of a sudden you got Bushel on your third pair playing with a guy like Pahal or something like that, or Brstevich. Then all of a sudden you head into that stretch drive where you're hoping that you're in a playoff spot, you're hoping you're competing for a playoff spot, and it doesn't completely tank your season. This is from their perspective, because I know there's lots of people on Team Tank who want them to lose. But from a Flames perspective, maybe they're thinking, all right, this is probably the best way for us to be competitive throughout the year and then transition Parek into the top 4, but not completely tank our chances this season. I think it's kind of an interesting idea from the Flames' perspective and from that perspective of wanting to be competitive and make the playoffs.
Interesting. I like it. I like it a lot. We'll see how that works out at training camp as well. One guy who I don't think has his job in jeopardy is Duston Wolf. What are your expectations for Dustin in the new season? He's going to have a new backup. He's going to have more expectations. The team has more expectations. What do you expect from 32 for the Flames this coming season?
It's interesting because I expect him to be even better. And, I don't know if that's possible because he was so good last year. Like we've talked about it a million times. He was the reason why the Flames were in the mix last year. Mm-hmm. But just with like the way his career has progressed over the years and just the way that he's been able to get better every single season, I expect him to continue that. And I expect him to take another step forward in his career. And I could totally see him being a top 12, a top 10 goaltender in the National Hockey League this year and being in the mix for the Vezina Trophy. Like I genuinely think that his ceiling is that high. And I know he's only 23, 24 years old, but man, I think with his drive, his personality, this like never-ending pursuit of getting better, that's kind of like the read I get from him, just watching interviews and all that kind of stuff. And just his talent and his athleticism, like sky's the limit for this kid. I'm really, really excited to see what he can do in a full year as the number one. Like I almost wonder, like I know he's a young guy, and I know they want to probably protect him a little bit, but like in terms of the number of starts next year, like I wonder if he pushes like 60. Because if it were up to him, he'd be starting every single game of the season. He's young, he's in incredible shape. He's got that kind of like youthful exuberance to him. Like he's not like a 35-year-old goalie that needs his rest. Like my expectations for him, like I said, top 10 goalie in the National Hockey League, potential Vezina Trophy conversation, like in the conversation for a Vezina Trophy. I don't want to say he's going to win or anything like that because I just think that's too much expectations. But to be in the conversation and, like I said, to push like 60, 62 starts. Like I know goalies don't start a whole heck of a lot anymore, but I really expect him to be the best player on this team, the MVP of this team, and a guy who proves that he is legit. Like he is the goalie of the future. He's going to be the next Mika Kiprusoff. That's with Zayne Parehk, I'm talking about tempering expectations. With Duston Wolf, it's the complete opposite. It's like my foot is on the gas pedal with expectations with this guy. I think he's going to be phenomenal. All
right, so mark it down there, listeners. Robert says that Wolf is going to win the Jennings, the Vezina. He's going to win the Hart. He's going to get everything.
And Lindsay, give me every award.
Yeah, give him every, including a second call. Give him a Calder just because.
Why not?
Right? How concerned are you about any sophomore slump?
I'm really not. Just because of his track record, every year he's been a goaltender. He's been essentially the best at every level except the NHL, and he was marvelous in his first year. So I just don't see a world where that sophomore slump kicks in, and anything can happen. The goaltending position is voodoo. It's just a wild position in professional sports. It's very unpredictable. But I feel like Wolf is as predictable as it can get when it comes to a goaltender. I just think he's so talented. He's so athletic. His movements, his agility, his ability to track pucks and look around screens. Like last year, it wasn't like he got lucky last year. Like last year, like he deserved all those numbers and he deserved all the starts that he got. And man, like I really think that there's not going to be a sophomore slump there, and I do think he's actually going to take another step forward in his development and turning himself into an elite NHL goalie. The sophomore slump doesn't scare me with him.
I'm with you because I watched this guy. We watched him with the Wranglers, and yes, it's a different level of hockey. He was actually better in his second year. Won an MVP, if we remember back in that season. Yep. He was also in the Western Hockey League his second year as a starter. He won the most valuable goalie in that league as well in his second year. He's no stranger to expectations, and so the reason why I went at it this way is because I asked you about all your expectations on this guy is because he knows expectations. He knows what it takes. He knows what people expect of him, and he expects it of himself. No matter how big our expectations are for Duston Wolf, I guarantee you that what he's talking about with Jason LaBarbera and the coaching staff are higher expectations than what the Flames have him as. He wants to be in that Vezina Trophy conversation. Not because he thinks he deserves it, is because he thinks he can earn that opportunity, earn those minutes, earn those accolades. And he's done nothing but do it at every level that he's had so far in his young career. I always worry about a sophomore slump, even with goaltenders, especially with goaltenders, because you saw Steve Mason won Rookie of the Year back when he was a Columbus Blue Jacket goaltender, and well, his career plateaued after that. And so you see both examples of both sides of that conversation. So goaltending being voodoo, you always worry about a sophomore slump, but I worry about it a lot less with a guy like Duston Wolf based on what I've seen him do in the past here. And even if he dials it back a little bit, a 2.6 goals against average is pretty good. What if it happens to be 2.8 next year? It's still good. That's still really good for the National Hockey League as a young goaltender. His save percentage was 910 if I read correctly. What if he's only 905? That's still pretty good in today's National Hockey League. And that's still, I think, good enough for the Flames to get where they want to be. If he gives them just what he gave them last year, this team is in a position to accomplish the goals of being the playoff team that they want to be. And so they have the expectations on Duston Wolf to be what he was last year for this team, to be a goaltender that they can turn to no matter what the game, no matter what the situation, and he's going to provide them the best goaltending. We look back on last season, I think you can count on one hand the amount of games you would call a bad game for Duston Wolf. I don't think you get more than 5 if you go back and you honestly look at what he started for last year. And I think if he does that again this year for the Flames, that's going to meet all expectations I have for this guy, to be a goaltender that is going to be the backbone of a team and drag this team where they want to go. Because we have to remember, when we talk about our expectations and about what we think a player is going to be, we have to think about what the team wants and what the team has said. They want to be a playoff team, and I think Duston Wolf can get them there almost by himself.
Well, he did it last year, and you know, a lot of people for last season, they talked about how everything went right for the Flames, and I don't know if that's really true. Like,
it didn't. Did nobody watch down the stretch? St. Louis, it went right for.
Oh yeah, that's true for sure. But like, you know, like obviously, like, you know, Huberdeau had a quote unquote bounce back year. He was a little better, but like, you know, you had a nice season for Coronado. You had a career high in goals for Kadri. Mm-hmm. You know, Uyghur was really good, but you know, you look at like Sharon Govich had a bad year. Andrei Kuzmenko, who I thought was going to be like a point per game player, was awful. That was a complete train wreck, unfortunately. You know, they bring in Farabee and Frost. Both those guys, they don't really do anything. Backlund and Coleman take a step back offensively. You know, Connor Zary gets hurt. Rasmus Andersson has the worst year of his career. Like not everything went right for the Flames last year. And the reason why they were where they were was because of Duston Wolf. Mm-hmm. And you know, Dan Vladar to a certain extent. Vladar was good at points last season, but it was mainly Duston Wolf. So if he can give them similar goaltending or even a step up, like, this team will be competitive and they will be in the mix for a playoff spot just because Wolf is that good.
I agree. We can glaze Duston Wolf all episode long, all week long, all year long. We have
all year long.
The tougher question here, Robert, is who's his backup and what are your expectations for the backup role?
Hell, your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea how this is going to play out. The best way I would describe it is that it's going to be a coin flip. I don't see much separating these two guys. I'm not a goaltending expert by any stretch of the imagination, so I won't pretend to know each of their games inside and out. If I had to put, you know, money down or, you know, gun to my head, you have to make a prediction. I will say I think Cooley will be the guy. What we saw from him in the first half of the AHL season last year was spectacular. Like, had he continued to play at that level, he would have been a slam dunk AHL MVP. Not only goalie of the year, AHL MVP. He was playing that well. And unfortunately, he got hurt. And I think injuries completely derailed his season. So if he can come into camp 100% healthy, I really think that he's going to win that job. But at the same time, I mean, Prisvetov is is a complete unknown for us because, we as Flames fans never really watched him in the NHL, never watched him in the AHL, and obviously didn't watch him in Russia this past season. So we don't really know what to expect from this guy. So, like I said, coin flip. I have no idea who it's going to be, but if I had to make a prediction, I would put my money on Devin Cooley.
Any chance someone surprises at camp for you? Say Owen Say has something to say about it, or I don't know.
Sergeyev,
Sergeyev comes in and has a big camp. Any third option that might surprise you at camp, or are you pretty set on it's going to be a 2-man race here?
I think it's going to be a 2-man race just because both those guys that we say and Sergeyev, I mean, both of them are going to be rookies at the pro level next year. They're both coming off NCAA season. So it'd be a very pleasant surprise if one of those guys like dominated in training camp. That'd be really cool. I don't expect that to happen. I do think it'll probably be a 2-man race for that backup job in the NHL this season. And, like another aspect to think about is, this backup goaltender is going to be like a partner with Duston Wolf. Like they're going to spend a lot of time together. They're going to be working together on and off the ice together. So you also have to think about who might be the best personality wise, or, who's going to work best with Duston Wolf. And we've seen like interviews of Cooley. He seems like a really good guy. I don't know anything about Przvetov. I don't know anything about his personality or his competitiveness and drive. But I also wonder maybe if that plays a role in it. Like, it could Przvetov be a better fit at the NHL level with Duston Wolf, like pushing him and making him better and practicing with him, because he's a little bit more experienced when it comes to the NHL compared to Cooley. That's kind of another interesting wrinkle to this whole thing that the Flames goaltending department's going to have to deal with.
It's interesting to watch how that's going to work out and how that's going to play out, because I have no read on the situation. I think it's going to be Devin Cooley, but again, Devin Cooley can end up being the backup in the AHL depending how things go. We talk about goaltending being a voodoo. I have no idea how this is going to play out, and I really am interested to see how they approach it at camp, how many games these guys get, because Dustin Wolf is going to need like 9 preseason games. You're going to see these. I think you're going to see these guys a lot. I mean, you're going to see these guys get full games early in the preseason because it is a true competition. It is. It's who wants it more. Who's going to come in here and take that job, and I think Cooley has the edge because the organization knows him. We talked about them going with the veteran guy. We've talked about all kind of Dustin Wolf knows Devin Cooley a lot as well. So I wonder if he has the inside track here, but I have no idea how it's going to play out. It's going to be a fascinating preseason and training camp to watch these guys battle it out back and forth here, because we just don't know, and that's why I posed the question of is there a third guy that maybe pokes his head in there? Like you just don't know. So we'll see how it works. I do think, like, I'm with you there. I think Devin Cooley does have the inside track, but you never know what plays out when you come to actual games and actual things. And it's going to be a guy who sits on the bench a lot. You got to have a guy who's going to be okay sitting there watching Dustin Wolf do his thing, and probably only played 25, 28 games this season, if that, right? And you want that guy to be prepared to play, come off the bench, and be a good teammate all at the same time. And that's not an easy role. And so some guys got to be prepared for it. So I just really looking forward to how that's going to play out at camp here.
Assuming Dustin Wolf is healthy for all of next season, how many starts do you think he's going to get?
64.
Think it's be that high? I think it should be that high, but like I'm just wondering, just because of
what did he play last year? 50 something, 56, something like that.
I'm going to take a look right now, but like, just with like the way goaltending's going these days, like it really seems like people are trying to limit starts. Like Andrei Vasilevsky and Connor Hellebuck led the NHL in starts last year with 63. So the arguably the two best goalies in hockey only started 63 games. I'm of the belief now. I might be out to lunch on this, but
he played 53 last year.
53, yeah.
So what is 8 to 10 more starts out of the question?
I mean, I don't think so. Like, I'm of the belief that goalies should be playing more, and I might be completely out to lunch on that. Maybe there's some numbers and there's reasoning why their starts have gone back considerably, but like, I see no reason why a guy like Dustin Wolf can't play like 65 to 70 games. Right? I really don't. I know the schedule is pretty compressed and there's a lot of demands, but like guys like Martin Brodeur, when he was winning Stanley Cups, the guy was starting 70+ games a year. Patrick Waugh, when he was winning Stanley Cups, he's starting 70+ games a year. Mika Kiprasov had a 5-6 year run where he started 70 plus games in a row. Like, Duston Wolf is the best player on the Calgary Flames right now, and he's our most important player. Why would you sit him? Say they target him to play 60 games. Why would you sit him for 22 games? He's your best player.
And he's only 24.
He's only 24, and like I get that, like there's going to be like on back-to-backs. You're not going to want to play him on, back-to-backs. I totally get that. But for like almost every other situation, I'm like, play the hell out of this guy. He is your meal ticket. He is your lottery ticket. He's the guy that's going to get you to the promised land. Play the hell out of him. And like you said, he's 24 years old. There's no reason to think why he can't play 65, 70 games. Like, it would be interesting to hear from like goaltending departments and goalie coaches why they've cut back on the starts so much, and hear if there's like, some data behind it. But I don't see a reason why you have to sit Dustin Wolf for 20+ games. I think that'd be crazy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think analytics has a lot to do with how goalie coaches approach goalies nowadays. But at the same time, sometimes just playing your best players wins you games. Like, you don't see football subbing out a quarterback because, well, analytics said this, right? You don't see baseball just switching a pitcher in the first inning because analytics, let your guys get you where you need to go. And you want to be a playoff team. Are you better off putting in Sergeyev for a couple of games to get to the playoffs, or are you better running Dustin Wolf out there again? Is it better to have Cooley and Prostetov do back-to-backs rather than play Dustin? No, put Dustin Wolf in there. Play Dustin Wolf. Get your guy in the game. I think if the Flames were good, they'd want their backup goaltender to play 20 or less games. I think that puts you in a good situation. If you're the Flames, because you still give Dustin enough rest on back-to-backs or 3 and 4 night type of situation, 4 games in 6 nights, some weeks. You want to play your guys though, but you also want to give them rest. So I think if you're back up that 18 to 20 game backup role, I think that gives your starter enough time. And then when you come to the playoffs, you're not going to have a guy run out of gas like we've seen Hellebuck run out of gas in the playoffs, or Shurkin's running out of gas in the playoffs. I think there's a fine line there between what we're doing here, but I'm with you. Play your guy because he's going to get you where you want to go. If you want to sit on the golf course in early April, then go ahead and play your backup 40 times a night, because I think that's where you're going to end up. Play your guy. I'm with you on that one there, Robert, a lot.
Just one more thing to consider with Wolf is that he's a smaller guy. And, like the goaltending position, like really beats guys up, especially like guys who are like Jacob Markstrom, who are 6'6", 230. Like these bigger goaltenders, I think those types of guys do need more nights off because the strain on their body is just crazy. But because Dustin Wolf is so much smaller than some of these guys, and he's so light, I really think that would allow him to play more games and conserve more energy and play really good hockey between games 65 and 70 and onto the playoffs. Like, because he's a smaller guy, because he's so agile and all that kind of stuff, I actually do think that the NHL game wouldn't take as much a toll on him as compared to a guy like Vasilevsky.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Very good point. Robert, anything else about the defense and goaltending you want to bring up on today's show? If not, tell us folks where they can find you and what's coming up from you on flamesnation.ca here.
No, I mean, I just I kind of kicked off the show with there. The more I think about this group, and this is with Rasmus Andersson, the more I think about the defense and the goaltending, the more I think that it's actually like a pretty strong group for this upcoming season. Like, Mackenzie Weegar, in my opinion, is like a top 20 defenseman. I'm a huge fan of his. Ball hopefully will continue to develop. Andersson, if he can get back to what we all know he can be, is like a top 30 defenseman in the National Hockey League. Can Parehk step in and give you power play 2 minutes and generate some offense from the blue line, which, I mean, there was no offense from the Flames blue line last year outside of Rasmus Andersson's like first 15 games of the year. Mm-hmm. And, can Joel Hanley continue to play solid, steady minutes like he did last year? Like, if all those things happen and you get solid goaltending from Dustin Wolf, like, it's actually not a bad group. It's a group that can get you to the playoffs. So like, I think if you're a Flames fan and you're in the group that wants them to make it next year and they want them to be competitive, I actually think it's a pretty competitive group. And like I said, if they end up trading Rasmus Andersson closer to the deadline, that will allow more time for Parehk to develop and maybe turn into a top 4 guy as early as next year. So there's lots to be excited about when it comes to this group of players on the Flames. And then in the prospect pipeline, we didn't really touch on it too much, but like, there is Brstevich coming in, there's Henry Muse coming, and Etienne Morin. Like, there's some other really good players coming up. So, short term and long term, the goaltending and defense is definitely the strength of this team, and there's a lot of exciting pieces here. So I'm pretty excited about that. And yeah, and then follow me on Twitter at Ring of Fire SkiGY. I'm trying to post more. I'm trying to put out more fun hockey content. And this week I compiled a list of the biggest one-hit wonder seasons in modern Flames history. So from the lockout until now. So today was Lance Boma. Remember Lance Boma's 14-15 season?
It was good. I'm waiting for my Joel Colburn to drop here.
There may or may not be a Joel Colburn coming up this week. So yeah, be on the lookout for fun stuff like that. Like I said, I'm trying to post more and trying to put out more fun Flames content here.
When Robert and I set out to do these summer episodes, we weren't sure of the response we were going to get. So I want to reiterate, thank you to everybody. We sat down to do this episode. I wasn't sure how this conversation with the defense was going to go and the goaltending. There was a lot more storylines than I thought. So I appreciate the conversation in the summer. So I appreciate all of those who take time to make us part of their podcast rotations. It is absolutely fun to chat Flames every single week with Robert and to share it with you folks. So thank you so much for those downloads. Continually share with your Flame friends. And throw some more comments at us on social media. Find Robert at Ring of Fire CGY. Find myself at Vintage Johnny 84 all across social media. Let us know what you love and hate about the show. And we'll be
maybe
back.
Not hate. Just tell us what you love.
Robert's a little soft, so tell him what you love about the show and DM me what you hate about the show, and we'll do our best to bring you wicked content coming up. Training camp's not that far away if you boil it down to it, so we're almost there, folks. Enjoy some more August weather, enjoy some more summer. We'll be back with you in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, enjoy whatever you're doing this summer with your family, and do it safely, please, because we want to see you back here for hockey season. On behalf of Robert Munich, I am Johnny Soap. This has been the Red Mile Rundown. We will see you very, very soon.